We are going to get started in just a few moments with Get Started with Figma Make. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Megan Ollinger and I'm a member of Figma's onboarding team. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I also have a wonderful team of Figma experts on the chat with me here today. I have Tatiana, Ellie, and Talia, who all work with some of our largest customers and are going to be here to assist with Q&A and chat as we go through our webinar today. So thank you, Tatiana, Ellie, and Talia. Now, before we dive in for today, I want to share our goals for this session so that you know exactly what to expect and what you'll take away from our time here today. This is a getting started section for Figma Make. So we're going to be pretty hands-on walking through Figma Make and Figma together. We're going to start by talking about Figma Make and what it does and how to actually use it. And as we go through a demo of Make today, we're going to highlight some essential tips and tricks and best practices that will help you get the best output as you start adopting Make for yourself. Finally, we will explore some new use cases and show you how customers are actually using Figma Make in practice with some examples for how it might fit in at different stages of your product development process. Couple of quick housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you have general comments or conversation you'd like to share during the webinar, please use the chat window and set the dropdown to everyone. Now, if you have questions that you would like to submit for Q&A, please use that Q&A button in Zoom instead. It's either Q&A or questions, and that button is going to help us track those questions a little better. That way we can follow up with you later via email if need be. Third, this webinar is recorded, so you will receive a copy via email in the next day or two. And finally, in all of your communications today, please remember to be kind and respectful per the Figma Code of Conduct. All right, with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into a quick introduction. Figma Make is a prompt to app tool inside Figma that allows anyone to turn their ideas and their designs into live working prototypes through natural language prompting. So with Figma Make, you can quickly build code-powered prototypes and apps, no dev skills required, in order to share your ideas with teammates, to validate and refine your designs, to communicate with your engineers, and even more. And that ability to really quickly create these live prototypes is so important because without it, the standard process of going from an idea to a live shipped product takes a ton of time and effort. And you all know that better than anyone, but it is costly and labor intensive to take an idea, to explore it fully, and to progressively get higher in fidelity. And because it takes so much time and alignment, you can often only explore a few ideas. You can't explore the full option space because it requires a certain degree of fidelity, and often you just don't have the bandwidth. I'm going to pause here really quickly because I'm noticing the conversation in the chat around audio issues. If you are having audio issues, make sure that you have clicked to join the audio in the Zoom. There should have been a button when you joined. And also make sure that your browser is up to date. If all else fails, we definitely will be sending out our copy of this recording via email. I'm so sorry if you're having issues with that today, but we'll make sure to get you a copy of that recording as we proceed. Okay. So with Figma Make, that ability to rapidly prototype and visualize those ideas, you can get much closer to a true culture of prototyping instead of picking a couple of ideas and really being limited to just exploring those ones. With Figma Make, everyone can validate their ideas quickly and, just as importantly, quickly pivot to new ones. Now, because Figma Make is so deeply integrated into the Figma platform, it lives right alongside all of the rest of your design work. And we're going to show you how to do several things today that really capitalize on this integration and make your makes better. For example, you aren't confined to just prompting via text in Figma Make. Your team can easily copy and paste in Figma design files that Make can use as a reference, which we believe provides much better outputs than linking to something static like a screenshot. Going even further, Figma Make can also reference styling context from your design libraries. So you can essentially publish your libraries to Figma Make to begin referencing styles like colors, typography, and more to ensure that what you're generating in Make is close to the patterns that your team has already established. Now, in addition to referencing those patterns, your team can also guide Figma Make through what's called a guidelines file. You can think of it as a free-form text file that provides rules and instructions to the LLM model. We'll show you how to do this in a little bit, but guidelines are a great way to ensure that the outputs in Make explicitly adhere to your design language and any standards you have that might not be easy to reference in that design file. We also have point and edit functionality, which brings some of the powerful visual manipulation tools that you're used to in Figma design over into Make. This means that once you've created a prototype, your team can go in and refine the outputs in a way that's really fast and targeted. Lastly, you will notice that this experience is multiplayer, just like the rest of Figma. So that means your team can go in and prompt together, make changes to the design, and even edit code all together in Figma Make. All right, now that we've toured through the basics here, let's go ahead and show you how to get started. First things first, there are a few prerequisites for using Figma Make. So we'll start with seat type. All seats on paid Figma plans can try Make in their drafts, but a full seat is required for full access to Figma Make. So full access includes the ability to share your makes, to collaborate with others, and to publish those makes if you choose to do so. Next up, in order to access Figma Make, AI must be enabled in your Figma org by an organization admin, and they can toggle that on under Admin Settings. If AI is not enabled for your organization today and your admin is interested in more information about Figma's approach to AI or how Figma Make works, we've got some great resources available to help them out. I'm going to drop those in the chat now. We'll also make sure to send them over in the follow-up email. That way they can dive into the finer details and get that toggled on for your org. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into a live demo to show you all the goodness of Figma Make. So here I am over in my Figma file browser here. And to get started with Figma Make, I'm going to click this Make shortcut right up here in the upper right-hand corner to start a new Make file. Now, the screen that you see here on my screen might look a little different from the screen that you see, but all of the functionality is the exact same. We're rolling out some different batches here right now, so bear with us here. Once we get to this page, it's time to get started. We can either start from scratch and describe an idea right here using natural language, or we can load up some inspiration by clicking on one of these icons from the Figma community. Or we can even start from an existing Figma design simply by pasting in a design frame. And when we paste in a design frame here, that allows Make to ingest not only the visual context of your design, but also the layers, the layer names, and the responsive settings that you've carefully crafted in that design over in Figma. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into a design file here and choose one of these designs that I would like to turn into a prototype. So here's my frame. This is what I would like to bring into Figma Make. As a tip and trick here, there are a couple of things that you can do in your Figma design file to prep this and make sure you get really great output in Figma Make. So the first thing that you want to do for your frame is make sure that all of your layers are named. When you name your layers, that creates a shared language between Figma Design and Figma Make. Now, you can totally do that manually if you'd like to, or once you have AI enabled in your org, you can use the Actions menu down here and choose Rename Layers. And that's going to have the AI run through. Whoops, let me go ahead and do this. Rename Layers. It's going to run through and rename all of the layers in your design to make sure that everything is formatted properly for Figma Make. Now, the next thing that you want to do is make sure that you have auto layout applied. Auto layout, if you're unfamiliar, is what makes your Figma designs responsive. We have it here toggled on already. I can kind of show you. Keep grabbing the wrong frame. Here we go. There we go. We can see how that adapts as we change the size of the frame. That's because we have auto layout applied. So you can enable this and fine tune it any way you'd like, but you also, again, have access to an AI tool that can help you out here. So if you come back down to your Actions menu, you can choose Suggest Auto Layout. Figma's going to run that for you and get all of the basics there taken care of. So now that my design is prepped, I'm simply going to click on the design I want, copy and paste it into Make. So to copy, I'm going to go ahead and do Command C, and then I'll jump back over into Make and just paste it right into that prompt box. So now Make has my design attached. The next step is I want to tell Make what library I'd like it to reference as it builds. Because I've put a ton of time and effort into styling this design over here with my library, I want to make sure Make knows how to reference that information. Down at the bottom of your prompt window, you will see a button that says Select Library. When you click this, you're going to see a list of all of the libraries you have access to that have already been published to Make across your organization. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that library, the Collab library, to attach it to my design. But I'm also going to go ahead and take a step back and show you how to actually push a library here into this dropdown to use it in Make. So I'm going to jump back to my design file here, and I've got my designs here, but I've also got my library components all baked right in. From my library file, go up to the File menu and go to Publish Library. And the first thing you want to do is just make sure that there haven't been any changes to your library that need to be published. Everything's up to date here already, but if not, you can publish your library first. Then down below, you have a button that says Export to Figma Make. Click on that and it's going to start up the process. This process takes a few minutes to go through, so just be aware of that if it takes a couple minutes the first time that you're doing that. The good news is this is a one-time action. You'll only need to repeat this step if you make changes to your library in the future and you want to push those changes back over to Make. Otherwise, once we extract that file, it'll be there ready to use in Figma Make ongoing. Okay, so at this point we have pasted in our design and we have extracted our library and attached it here for style context. Now it's time to prompt. So this is the part, whoops, I clicked on the design. Here we go, I'll click in the text box here. This is the part where we're gonna tell Make exactly what we want it to do. And as a tip, for your very first prompt, especially for your very first prompt, writing a strong prompt is going to make a big difference in the AI output. So the more specific you are up front, the better your end results. I have a colleague who thinks of this like you are briefing a designer, right? It's helpful. You wouldn't just say, turn this into a homepage, right? You're going to share context and constraints and inspiration about what you would like to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the prompt in here for sake of time, and I'll kind of talk through these elements as we go so you can learn about effective first prompt building. Things that you want to include here. Make sure you include the task. What should Figma Make do? Next, you want to give it some context, either about the goal of this design, or if you're in a later stage and you're building out multi-screen flows, give it some context about where this screen fits. Beyond that, any key design elements or expected behavior. For example, here, I want to make a page where users can click on the category tab and filter those. And then finally, any constraints that you'd like Figma Make to consider. From there, click go, and we're going to jump right into that Figma Make experience. You can see over here on the left-hand side that Figma Make is going to start reasoning and thinking here as it decides what to build. Now, this again can take some time. So I have a version of this ready to go over in my next tab for you that's going to show you the final output using this exact same frame and using that exact same prompt. And we can see the results here that like Figma Make does a pretty good job getting this design prepped and ready to go. We've got our search bar, everything looks laid out good. But there's an obvious issue here, right? Like some of these image fills didn't come through the first time. But I'm in a place where I'm starting off really strong. I've got this interactive prototype, and now I can actually go in and make changes and start to iterate to get this pixel perfect. Now, before we start looking at any of those edits, I want to show you two things that I think are really helpful. And that's going to be our styles file and our guidelines file. So down here, I'm going to make sure, oops, sorry, let me pull in my library here. Actually, I'm going to jump right over into code to show you this for today. In your code tab, you're going to have access to two files that work together to tell Make how it should interpret and execute your designs. So we'll start with this file, styles file. That's hard to say, globals.css. When you published your library to Figma Make, it created this file for you. And this is where we've extracted things like color tokens, typography scales, spacing, and more into CSS. Now, if you are code savvy and you would like to edit these styles in any way, you absolutely can. You can click in and make edits to this file right here. But you don't have to, right? We're going to extract all the basics over here for you. Now, on the other hand, you're going to have this guidelines file, guidelines.md. And this works alongside your CSS file to give Make additional context about how you want it to proceed with every single prompt in this file. So you can think of it as like a free-form text file where you can add your own rules or instructions that you want adhered to throughout the duration of this file. So things you might want to put in this file, I would think about any details that should persist that might not be immediately apparent from just pasting in this frame. So for example, interactivity or responsivity details that Make should consider with every prompt. For example here, I might want add pressed states to all buttons to ensure that persists every time, and that way I don't have to repeat it in my prompts every time over and over and over again. Cool. So we have edited our guidelines file over in the code tab. I'm going to jump back into the preview here. I'll also note that once you select a library and attach it to this file, it's going to persist for all future prompts as well. So that means you can't remove the library or change to another one. If you wanted to do that, you would need to start over with a new Figma Make file. Okay, so now it's time to start editing this to get my site up and running and feel really good about the output here. And in Figma Make, you have a few different ways that you can take this initial output and expand upon it. You can use something called point and edit. You could simply reprompt. And you can also always attach images or additional Figma frames to those prompts to continue guiding the AI along the way. Now, point and edit is probably my personal favorite, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at that here now. The point and edit tool right here in your prompt box allows you to highlight specific parts of your design and make direct changes without always needing a brand new prompt. So depending on the element you click, if it's an image or a text field, etc., we're going to pop up a little toolbar here that lets you adjust things like color, corner radius, spacing and padding, even typography settings. So this is a great way that you can make really small visual refinements and even layout tweaks that are often much faster to run this way instead of reprompting. So for starters here, maybe I want to bump up the size of this location text. I can come in and change that however I'd like. I probably wouldn't go that big, but you can see that it's already going to go find all of those matching layers and make sure that it's applying those changes wherever it should in those repeating places. So really nice quick efficiency tip there where Figma Make's going to recognize what you're trying to do and help you scale up those edits. Now, you can also use this point and edit tool to target a specific element for a prompt-driven update. So for example, maybe I want to add some animation to a button or swap a component for another picture or image that I'm pasting into the chat. For starters, I can show you here that if I select this button, maybe I want to give it a cool bounce effect. So once I've selected the div, it attaches that right here as context into my prompt box, and I can ask for changes. So I can say, make this button bounce when I hover over it with my mouse. Now, I can send that off, of course, but again, for sake of time, I'm going to jump over into that next demo file where we've done that exact same prompt. And you can see that Figma Make is giving me a really cool little effect here for hovering over with my mouse that's targeted just to that dig that we selected. All right. Now, while we are here, I'm going to go ahead and use point and edit as well to try and tackle this image issue, right? I want to make sure all those images are coming over as they should. So what I'm going to do is select the section of my design that I'd like to target. In the box here, I'm going to go ahead and tell Figma Make to populate each of these browse cards with an image as per the attached design. And then I'm going to jump back to my design just to make sure I give it all of the help it needs. And I'm going to grab that frame that I'm interested in. Again, copy it, Command C, and bring it back over. Here I am, paste into my chat bar. So I've got my div selected, I've pasted in my context, and I can send that chat off. Sake of time here, again, I've got another file. You're used to this by now, but we've got that same prompt, and we can see that Figma Make went in and updated all of those cards, bringing in those images. So AI isn't perfect, but usually you can prompt exactly where you need to go to get really targeted and make those updates. All right. Now, as you start to think about building this prototype out further, for example, adding in new screens or building multi-page flows, when you're doing this as a general best practice, it's usually helpful to keep your follow-up prompts smaller and more focused, as opposed to saying something like, link all designs from dashboard in my project and pasting everything all at once, right? By making sure that you're working through each step in a focused way, you're going to get better results as you continue to build out this make. Another tip that I like to give people is to make sure that you're telling Make what you don't want to change. So writing something like link this design and pasting one in, but change nothing else about the existing design. AI can have a mind of its own, and that little extra prompt can stop you from creating problems that maybe you didn't otherwise plan for. Now, I will say that if something happens and it does make a change that you weren't expecting, or maybe you just don't like the output and you want to try again with a new version, scrolling back up in your chat history, you can use this little return button after every prompt to restore the previous version. So you've got a little bit of a built-in safety net there for you in the panel. Now, we've got this working prototype, and up until now, we haven't touched a line of code to generate this other than just showing you that CSS and guidelines file. From that same point and edit tool, you can target any element on the page, and you'll see a little button here called Go to Source. And if you click that, it's going to jump you over into the code tab and also highlight exactly where that element lives in your code base. So here you've got access to a lightweight code editor. It lives right inside your project where you can view the code, modify it, or even write your own code if you'd like to. You can also explore all of the files that have been generated as part of this project throughout the Figma Make AI process. So you can bring in your dev partners in here, or if you have coding knowledge and want to make some quick changes here in code instead of going through the prompting tool, you have access to design in all three of those ways: prompting, point and edit, and straight here in the code tab. I'll also point out two quick tools over here that are nice little time savers. This one is a quick formatting tool. So if you click this, it's going to clean up any messy code or spacing or indentation issues that can arise when you have AI coding solutions. You also have a download button that will give you the full code base as a zip file for easy handoff to your devs, or if you'd like to host a live version of this project somewhere else. Now, once you are happy with your prototype and you are ready to start sharing it with others, there are a couple of ways that you can do that. Files are really easy to preview and share. If you're used to Figma design, it's going to feel a lot like sharing a standard Figma prototype. So up in the right-hand corner, you have this play button here. You can click this, and it's going to open it up in a new tab, full screen view, interactive preview of your prototype. So this is one way that you can take a look at this in that full mode without the distractions of the editor in Figma Make. From here, you also have access to the share button. And again, it's going to feel really similar here if you're used to Figma design. When you click share, you're going to get options to share this with other members of your organization. You can choose if you want to share with a particular team, for example, or you can even toggle it to anyone to create a public link and share this with people who don't have access to your Figma organization. Now from there, you can either click copy link, or you can even use this button, copy link to full screen view, if you want to default the viewer into that full screen preview experience. So that method allows you to share a link to this prototype or a link to this file within Figma. You also have access, though, back within your Figma Make interface to publish this file directly to the web. Some caveats here. Your organization admins need to allow publishing in your org in order to publish. They can choose to disable that. So talk to your org admin if you don't see that option and you think it might be a good fit for you. Now, when you hit publish, your project will be assigned a dedicated URL. If you are using a custom domain in Figma, depending on your plan, you have access to a certain number of custom domains. We will publish it to that domain. But once you go ahead and publish that, that file is going to be instantly live and accessible on the public internet. So consider this option carefully for any work that you'd rather keep internal. In that case, it's probably a better choice to share the file going through that share route instead of publishing to push it live to the internet. Now, publishing can still be a great option if you're working on things that are not top secret or locked down, you're building fun apps or things to share with friends and family, then publish is a great fun option there because it'll instantly bring it live. All right. Jumping back over into our slides, that's the end of our live demo piece of Figma Make, but seeing all of those features in Figma is really only part of the story, right? Like we know that the real magic is going to happen when you're able to start applying all of these things to real challenges in your workflows. So for the next part of our webinar here, we're going to talk through and show you some concrete examples of how Figma Make can fit into your product development processes. Hopefully we are. Let's go slides. There we go. All right, kicking off, we're going to start by talking about discovery and ideation. So I think that Figma Make really shines here at the front of your product development lifecycle because it is so effective in helping you move from totally blank page to a live concept and doing that really fast. So kicking off in these early phases, Figma Make is great at helping you think outside of the box. So you could prompt make with an open-ended or really exploratory idea, and that'll allow you to uncover directions you might not have otherwise considered. It can help you get out of your own bias, or if you're in a creative rut during that ideation phase, by just unlocking the power of that AI expanded thinking. Next, we've seen that Figma Make can also be really helpful in speeding up industry research. So you can prompt Make to reflect on patterns across your industry or common best practices to quickly generate a variety of ideas all at once without spending hours on personal research. So this can give you a fast sense of what's typical and what you might want to disrupt. Finally, in this last one here, as you've seen already, Figma Make really excels at that rapid concept validation. So you can near instantly turn these low fidelity designs or even static frames into live interactive prototypes. That makes it easy to explore more ideas than you could previously, considering constraints on bandwidth and resources. It also means that you can collect feedback earlier on by having something live to share and quickly pivot to new ideas and testing alternatives without investing a ton of time or effort. Now, let me give you a quick example here. Let's say that I manage a grocery app called World Peas. Clever name. I'm interested in exploring better ways to call out that these items are on sale during the browsing experience. Now, I could start by throwing a bunch of ideas out there and looking into other apps to see what's standard, but that can take a lot of time, right? So in this example, I have simply given Figma Make a frame for my design and asked it to give me some ideas considering best practices and common approaches found in the industry. In return, Make created this great exploratory resource for me. So it allows me to toggle through some common approaches like a sales badge or a strike through price, and better see what those would look like mocked up live onto my own design. So now I've got a quick way to accelerate all of that research and start generating some ideas pretty quickly. So let's say I really like that sales badge idea and I'd like to see how it would look live in my mobile application and start shopping this idea around with colleagues. What I can do is easily grab a screenshot of that output from the idea file and get started. So here I had an existing Make prototype and I told Make, use this design as inspiration and add a sale badge to the ginger and raspberry components. And in just a few moments, I've got a working prototype that looks and feels just like my application, so that I can start exploring what that's really going to feel like in real life. And if I want to explore multiple of these ideas, I can easily rinse and repeat. And I've got a couple of different paths to show people right away. Another pro tip I like to point out here. Go ahead and create a few really solid make prototypes of areas of the product you own or other high traffic user flows. That way, you can use them kind of like templates and duplicate those files to quickly explore new directions anytime you want to get started with exploring a bunch of ideas in this high fidelity way. It's a method that I recommend, especially because when you duplicate a make file, it's going to retain that full chat history so that you don't have to start from scratch every single time you're prototyping one of these up. All right. Now, once you have moved past that early ideation phase, Figma Make will continue to support your work as you shift into defining and designing your experience. Now, we have talked at length already about how Make is going to help you with interactive prototyping. What I think is worth double clicking on here is how those prototypes might differ from what you can build in Figma Design. Now, because your make files are code powered, you can build more complex animations, you can build input fields, you can build transitions and other details that either wouldn't be possible in your Figma design prototypes, or they would be very, very time consuming and very complex to build. So putting them here into Make is going to help bring those prototypes to the next level. Make is also built with responsive adaptation in mind. So, as you are evaluating designs across different platforms, you can use Figma Make to instantly research responsive variations, understand and refine breakpoints and layouts across different breakpoints. And then finally, we've also seen Make serve as a tool for coaching and critiques. So you could prompt Figma Make to evaluate your designs for clarity or hierarchy or whatever it may be. And it can also help you from there explore different layouts or offer suggestions that you might not have thought of, all with the goal of improving your design quality. So I'm going to start here by showing you an example of a more complex prototype. Here is my grocery app again, World Peas, and I'm actually going to toggle over and just show you this live in Figma Make. This, you can see, is really a fully functional experience. We can add a product to our cart, go into our cart, go to the checkout flow, and even start going through a realistic form fill experience. This was all created in Figma Make via prompting, and our designer advocate, Anna, who created this, has really noted the complexity of this build and how having this live in Figma Make allowed her to develop a much stronger prototype. While I'm here, I also want to call out the device preview button up here. I don't think I showed you that before. This will let you also quickly preview that design across different mobile devices. So again, a great way to quickly test your design across those different devices and get a feel for how it's going to behave. Coming back into our slides here, here's another example of how you might use Figma Make for these critiques. So here's an example where we've given it a design and said, without making any changes, critique the balance and hierarchy. And it's given me its thoughts on those output. I can then decide from there if I want to ask Make to implement those changes and see what it might feel like. Or if I like my design and I don't want to accept that critique, that's okay too. The key here, the tip I want you to take away is without making any changes. That allows you to make sure you're using Make more like a chatbot instead of an agent whenever you want it to give you feedback, but not actually touch your design. All right, next up, we're going to move into validation and user testing. Now, in this phase, you're starting to share those live prototypes that you're developed to test with users, test with real users. And because you can publish these to the web if you choose to do so, you could share live applications that are accessible across real devices to help you validate flows and features and usability. Now, you can also augment your prototypes with backend capabilities using our native integration with Supabase. So that's going to allow you to test things like user authentication flows, to create like a content storage solution on the back for photo or file uploads. And it does even more kind of database backend solutions so that your designs can feel more realistic and robust. Now, as you start to capture feedback, you can quickly adjust those prototypes in response to what you've learned from your users. Another cool tip is you could consider asking Figma Make to guide users through specific tests if you're running guided user tests. So if you're looking for a really targeted form of feedback, we'll show you how you can create one of those guided prototypes there. Last but not least, because Make is powered by code, you can also easily test your designs with real data sets. So that's a great way to simulate real world scenarios and see how your designs might respond to edge cases when they're input with a live data set. You can either upload sample data files to populate your designs or even ask Make to generate its own sample data tables to get you started with some mock info. So showing you some of these live here. Here's an example where I've asked Figma Make to add login functionality to that World Peas app using Supabase on the back end. And what that allows me to do is actually show a live login and sign up experience and even authenticate when there's an error to show me that haven't met my password requirements here. So we've got one that again is live and functioning and feels really realistic for my end users. This is an example from another project where we told Figma Make that we'd like to run a guided user test. We've given it a little bit of context about what we'd like to test and how to keep the user on track by helping them find their way back to this data table. From there, Figma Make added this testing functionality where we can start a user test and it guides the user down to where they'd like it to go to keep them on task if they stray. Finally, to show you an example of how sample project data might work, to populate that dashboard, we have asked Make to create a data file with a list of 200 projects and IDs and dates and more. Figma Make generates that and populates it right into our design. So you can see all of those project data files right here under the Data tab, and then we can see how they actually look when they're populated into our design. Down here, as we go down to the bottom, we can see where we maybe have some issues with layout that we need to address for some of those edge case projects with longer names. Again, you can also upload your own file data or prompt Figma Make to create whatever type of data you'd like here. All right, nearing the end of our sample use cases, we're going to finish up with how Make can help play a key role in bridging the gap between design and development. Now, it's one of the most common challenges we hear about, aligning that design intent with what actually gets built. Now, with Make, you can, of course, share prototypes that feel like the real product. And that's going to help everyone in line on the intent really quickly and also minimize the number of iteration cycles that you need to go through to get to clear implementation details. You can also use Make to generate design specs and handoff details as part of this process. So, two examples I want to show you here. The first one is a real example of how we used Figma Make right here at Figma to align design and dev on a pretty complex feature. So this is an early snapshot of how the team behind grids in Figma Design built the vision for that layout picker over here in Figma Make. And it was helpful for our designers because they could show the engineering team live how they imagined things to move and feel really, really quickly. This prototype took about an hour and a half to develop in Figma Make, and the team estimated that if they were to prototype this out in code due to its complexity, it would have taken several days. Another example here on how you can use Make to help with handoff details. Right now, Make only codes in React. And if you are using other frameworks, you can simply ask Make to assist with those specs. So in this example here, we have a prompt, make it so that there is JSON code output describing all the parameters and make it update as the input changes. And we can see that Make generated this data output panel right over here that translates all of those parameters into JSON and allows us to export them from there. So really handy tool that'll display that code output for your devs to use as a starting point or even just inspiration for the ultimate solution that you choose to go forward with. Another prompt here is you could prompt Make right in that chat to give you handoff specs for your build without changing the code at all. Use those magic words. And if you do that, then your specs will return to you right here in the chat box. You could also ask it to add those specs to your code files, generate a folder in your code files for handoff specs in another framework, and then you can export them from there. Oh no, where are my slides? I'm in my slides. All right, as we get ready to wrap up our webinar today, I want to leave you with a few next steps and recommendations. First, highly recommend that you try Figma Make. Get in there, build some stuff. The best way to start seeing the potential here is to really get creative and using it for yourself and thinking about how to fit it into your own processes today. We've got an awesome community file that can help you get started right away. I'm going to toss it into the chat now alongside another file, which is 8 essential tips for getting started with Figma Make. Most of these are things we covered during today's webinar, like how to prompt, when to use point and edit. But you can find those all recapped in this awesome blog post, and then you can share out with your teams as well. Finally, would also encourage you to explore the Figma community. If you haven't been in there lately, there is a whole tab dedicated to Figma Make where you can see projects from fellow community members and use that for inspiration or just download to see how they prompted and start learning for yourself. All right. We have a little bit of time left for Q&A today. I know that the team has been hard at work answering questions in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and run through two FAQs that I'm sure have come up, or if not, will maybe come up for you at some point. And then we'll take a look at anything that's left in the chat here. So one question we hear about is when should I use a prototype in Figma Make versus a standard prototype in Figma Design? And the guidance I would give you here is that Figma Make is a great option for brand new ideas or explorations, for complex prototypes that you can't or just don't have time to make in Figma Design, or any prototypes where you'd like code-powered functionality, including those back-end integrations, code layer animations, working input fields, and more. Now, Figma Design is still a great option if you're building something really lightweight and you're confident in prototyping, or if you are really attached to the in prototype comment functionality in Figma Design. As of right now, that's only available in your design files. If you're prototyping in Make instead and are thinking about ways to still gather feedback, spin up a FigJam file. That's a great way where you can capture those feedback in stickies. And FigJam has great AI built in as well, where you can quickly summarize all of the themes or sort those cards into categories to help you make sense of all the feedback that you're getting. All right, the next question that we hear all the time, and I see a few of them in the chat here, can I copy a design from Figma Make into Figma Design? The answer here is not today, but we are working on it. So over the next weeks to months, you will hear about this. We're taking a phased approach to getting those designs back into Figma Design. So expect to hear something on this very soon. We know that being able to take that output from Make and put it into Design and fine tune it and get it exactly how you'd like on the design side is a high priority. So more to come here. All right, I am going to jump back over into the Q&A and see if there are any that I can help cover live here. I see a question on, I'll go ahead and answer this live. What is the technical reason why we can't swap a library? I'm just interested to know. I assume it has something to do with the history. It's a great question. I don't have the technical answer for you here today, but what I can tell you is that attaching that library as style context is step one in our journey to getting your design system and Figma Make fully compatible, right? So right now you can push that style context over and kind of reference some lightweight styles for typography and colors and whatnot. But we are working closely over the next, again, weeks and months to bring those to parity so that you've got a lot more of a robust solution that aligns your design system with Figma Make. Let's see. So we've got a couple of those that we've answered. I'm going through here. Can we download images after we make changes in the code? Um, Great question there. I'm assuming you mean can you download the like assets in Figma Make? I believe those will come through the code file download button, but we can follow up on that and check on this to confirm. Let's see. I see a question. Could I use Figma Make to make and host my portfolio? Yeah, absolutely. I'd also consider Figma Sites for that use case as well. So Figma Sites is another tool that you have access to in Figma that has site functionality built right in, and it has code layers where you can prompt to create animations as well. But also highly recommend if you're thinking about that use case, Figma Design for Beginners, our new course available on YouTube and on the Figma help site. It specifically goes through a use case of how to build a portfolio. So that might be one that's really helpful for you. All right, rolling through here. Let's see. I know we've got a ton of questions, so thanks for your patience as we're working our ways through this. All right, I see a question here from Daria. I was doing a prototype of a multi-screen flow. For some time, it went really well, but eventually for Figma Make, it started to forget what was built before and ruined the functionality we had already covered. Are there any ways to prevent that from happening? Great question. I think using that prompt of please don't change anything else in the design, only make these targeted updates is a great way to do so. Leaning on that point and edit tool to target in on exactly the elements that you'd like the design to change is a really good one as well. And also using that revert button. If you notice something has gone off course, you could go back to the previous version and try again. All of those are ways that you can kind of future proof against that. All right. Scrolling through here. I see a question on dev mode from John. My team is trying to push Figma dev mode as our tool for design to dev handoff. Highly recommend. It's awesome. Join us for intro to dev mode if you're interested in that. It's another webinar that we run regularly. I'll throw the link in the chat. But to finish your question, does Figma have any dev annotation functions, component source, variable used, inspecting, design, etc.? So, if your users have a dev seat, they do have access to the code functionality within Figma Make, so they can access that code panel and see everything in there. Beyond that, we're working on much tighter alignment between these tools. So for now, I would say dev mode is your place to go to get really all of the fine-tuned, really specific details, especially if you have something like Code Connect up and running. But our team is thinking about this every day and is also very, very open to feedback. So please feel free to pass your thoughts along, and we would love to take those into consideration as we work on building those integrations. I see a question here. If the library is updated, will Make update your designs based on that library? Today, the answer is no. You would need to push that library over again and reprompt. But again, we are working on much tighter integration, and I bet you can hear more on this pretty soon. Scrolling through here to see if we've got any other ones that are popping up a good bit. Are we going to publish design or are we going to publish guidelines around how to best set up the design library file so that when we are attaching them to Make, it will ingest the pattern library in the most optimized way? This is a tricky question to answer. I would say today, make sure you, in your actual designs and for all of the components in your library, make sure your layers are really clearly named. Make sure you have auto layout set up. Today, Figma Make is going to look again at like styles and typography. As we increase that integration between Figma Make and your libraries, you're going to see even tighter clarity there between the two. So no guidance today, but expect more to come as those features roll out, and we'll make sure that we get those all synced up and running really nicely. All right, can I download interactive prototype files from Make? Yes, you can download those from the code tab and you'll have all of the files there in that zip file. All right, scrolling through here. We have a lot of similar questions on design systems, on dev mode functionality. I'm looking for any that would be unique to cover here live. Can you copy multiple screens from design to Make? Our recommendation there would be going one screen at a time. As long as you're being focused and working on that one screen at a time to build out your larger flow, your output is going to be much, much better than pasting in a bunch of files all at once. All right. There are some specific questions here in the chat that seem related to specific files. If you're having issues with particular designs, definitely recommend contacting our support team. They might need to take a closer look at those. I see a question here on custom fonts. As far as I'm aware, Figma Make does not support custom fonts today, but it's something we're working towards very rapidly alongside those design system alignment things. So, more to come on that in the near future. And I see in the chat, what do I mean by custom? There's going to be a default set of fonts supported there today in Figma Make. Others that you maybe have hosted in your own Figma design platform or outside of that set selection there are not supported today. But again, working on that, we understand those are a large part of your libraries. Can animations be achieved through prompting? Absolutely. Those are things that you can do live in Figma Make, no problem. And I think that we will go through about one more question here. We'll do our best to follow up with guidance on the rest of our questions in a follow-up email for you here too. Does Figma Make have MCP access? Question from Zach. Today, no, it does not have MCP access, so that'll be exclusively through dev mode. But again, we're working on those integrations all the time. This product is really new, so eager to hear feedback on all of those and how you would use them. All right, we are going to go ahead and wrap up a little early today. I don't believe we're going to have time to get through the rest of the questions here, and most of them are duplicates or related to things we've talked about, but I will make sure to take a look through and send out resources for any common themes there. Thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here and hope you were able to take away some ideas for how to bring this into your workflows. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.